ever feel like, honestly, the way businesses approach marketing is like stuck in the past?
Mm.
You know, like separate departments, processes that just feel clunky, more about just brand awareness than actual like measurable impact.
Yeah.
Well, today, get this, we're diving into SwayTech, a company that's like shaking things up.
Okay.
They're doing this thing, they call it a cross-functional marketing mindset.
Okay.
Think of it like this. What if every decision your business made, like, had marketing baked right in?
What's so fascinating here is how SwayTech is like really challenging this traditional view of marketing being just a cost center.
Yeah.
They're positioning it as, this key driver of growth, innovation, like woven into the very fabric of how a business operates.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but I'm also like a little skeptical. Isn't that idealistic? I mean, how do they actually get companies to make that kind of like fundamental shift?
So they've developed this really interesting approach, and it really centers around this idea of direct collaboration.
Yeah.
So instead of just, swooping in with some prepackaged solution, they work side by side with these businesses to, like, really merge marketing strategy with overall business goals.
So less about flashy campaigns and more about like really tangible results.
Exactly. They actually call it this zero-waste, high-impact approach.
I like it.
It emphasizes, efficiency, measurable outcomes, and this laser-like focus on driving real business value.
I can see how that would be appealing in like today's fast-paced business world.
Right.
But let's talk specifics. In these slides you've shared, they mentioned something called a SwayStorm. It sounds kind of intense.
It is designed to be, quite intense,
Yeah.
but in a way that's highly focused, very productive.
Yeah.
So imagine like a rapid-fire problem-solving session where they condense what might normally take like months of brainstorming and planning into a tightly structured sprint.
Okay.
So achieving significant progress in just a fraction of the time.
So it's like hitting the fast forward button on like business solutions.
Exactly.
What kind of businesses are best suited for this approach?
It really depends on, I think, their specific needs and challenges. They offer different, I guess you could call them flavors of SwayStorms, ranging from a one-day intensive, for things like a quick marketing audit, to like a multi-week deep dive for developing a really comprehensive growth strategy.
Hold on, let's unpack those different SwayStorm options for a second.
Sure.
Say a company is facing like a pretty urgent challenge. Maybe their latest product launch is tanking, or they're dealing with some sudden PR crisis. Which SwayStorm would they choose?
That's where their one-day fast track comes in.
Okay.
That's designed for, those quick win situations where speed and just like decisiveness are really paramount.
Walk me through what that day actually looks like. Is it just like hours of PowerPoint presentations?
Not at all. It's incredibly interactive,
Yeah.
very client-centric. So SwayTech starts by assembling, a tailored team of experts.
Okay.
And they actually have the client answer some like pre-work questions beforehand to make sure everyone's like totally on the same page coming into the day.
So there's prep work involved, even for the fast track option?
Absolutely. The goal is to, really make the absolute most of that day.
Yeah.
And that requires a really clear understanding of the client's specific challenges and goals. Then they dedicate a solid 3 hours to collaborative brainstorming,
Okay.
just problem solving in this very dynamic, high-energy environment.
3 hours sounds really short, though. Do they actually achieve anything substantial in that time frame?
It's more about generating that really focused momentum
Okay.
rather than, solving every single problem in one go.
Yeah, okay.
At the end of the day, the client walks away with like a clear action plan.
Okay.
It outlines the root causes of the specific challenges they're facing, a strategic approach for addressing them, and then like a defined roadmap for moving forward.
So it's like a jump start rather than a complete overhaul.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
I like that. But what happens after the initial, storm has passed?
Yeah.
Do they just leave the client to kind of fend for themselves?
This is where their what they call fractional plus approach comes in.
Okay.
And this is something I find really intriguing.
Let's dive into that in a bit.
Okay.
But first, you mentioned other flavors, I think you called them, of SwayStorms.
Right.
Right? Because a one-day sprint, like, even if it's super action-packed,
Yeah.
it can only cover so much ground, right?
Yeah.
What if a company needs, like, a more in-depth strategic, I don't know, overhaul?
That's where those other SwayStorm options, really
Yeah.
come into play.
Okay.
So they have this thing called the 1 week sprint, which, I mean, you could probably guess it's a much, much deeper dive.
Okay.
So over 5 days, they kind of guide the client through this really structured process of like
Yeah.
immersion,
Okay.
ideation, then strategy development,
Mm-hmm.
and then ultimately action planning.
It's interesting that even within that week-long process, right?
Yeah.
They've built in days where the client, like, isn't directly involved.
Yeah.
Not every business has the bandwidth to, like, put everything else on hold
Right.
for a full week,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. And I think, SwayTech recognizes that time
Yeah.
is like such a precious commodity for
Yeah.
their clients. So they've designed this 1 week sprint so that it's intensive,
Yeah.
but it's also manageable, right?
Yeah.
So there are designated days for SwayTech to kind of work behind the scenes,
How-
analyzing data, crafting strategies, refining their approach, all that good stuff.
So what kind of outcomes, like, are we talking about with this more in-depth sprint?
Yeah.
Give me an example of a problem that a company might, like, tackle with this approach.
Okay, so let's say a company is really struggling with customer retention.
Okay.
So they're acquiring new customers,
Yeah.
but they're having a really hard time kind of keeping them engaged long term.
Mm.
So the 1 week sprint could really help them uncover,
Okay.
like, what are the root causes of this churn?
Okay.
How can we develop strategies to, like, really improve customer lifetime value
Right.
and then create a very clear roadmap for actually implementing those strategies, across different departments?
It makes sense. It sounds like this 1 week sprint is really about, like, driving that cross-functional marketing mindset we were
Yeah.
talking about earlier, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about, like, tweaking marketing messages. It's about kind of aligning the entire organization
Yeah.
around this customer-centric approach, right?
Precisely.
Mhm.
Precisely. And then, if a company's really looking for even deeper transformation, like rapid growth,
Okay.
they offer what they call the 3 week catalyst.
Okay.
So this is like their most comprehensive offering,
Got it.
and it's designed to help businesses achieve, those really breakthrough results in areas like, go-to-market strategy, capital raising, things like that.
Let's talk about that capital raising piece for a moment.
Okay.
Because we hear so much these days about, startups and businesses needing to secure funding. Yeah.
To, like, fuel their growth.
Right.
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 How does SwayTech, like, approach that challenge differently?
I think they recognize that securing funding isn't just about having, like, a really polished pitch deck.
Yeah.
It's about, crafting a narrative that's really compelling, right?
Yeah.
It's about understanding, the psychology of investors and being able to articulate, like, a really clear path
Right.
to profitability.
So it's about kind of telling a story, right?
Yes.
That resonates with investors and gives them confidence in the
Yes.
business's, like, long-term potential.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what SwayTech really helps companies do,
Okay.
is develop that story through, in-depth market analysis, competitive positioning.
Doing that financial modeling, really,
Yeah.
they act as like a strategic partner,
Okay.
guiding that company through every single step of that fundraising process.
Okay, let's circle back to that term you mentioned earlier, fractional plus.
Right.
It sounds intriguing, but I need a bit more context. What exactly is a fractional leader?
Okay.
And how does this approach, like, tie into the SwayStorms we've been talking about?
So it's a really, I think, brilliant solution
Okay.
to a really common problem.
Okay.
So many businesses, especially those that are, in growth mode, they need, like, very specialized expertise.
Yeah.
But they may not have the resources.
Right.
Or even necessarily, like, the
Yeah.
need for a full-time executive in that specific area.
Right.
And that's where this whole idea of fractional leadership
Okay.
comes in.
So instead of hiring, like, a full-time CMO
Right.
or COO,
Exactly.
you get access to that high-level expertise on a, like, fractional basis.
Yeah.
Like renting a brain.
Yeah, essentially.
I like it.
You're getting the, the strategic guidance, the
Uh-huh.
experience of a seasoned executive,
Yeah.
but you're not,
Yeah.
paying that overhead of a full-time salary
Sure,
and
yeah.
benefits and all that.
I bet that's appealing to a lot of companies, especially,
Oh, absolutely.
in today's kind of uncertain
Yeah, yeah,
economic climate.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think, in the context of SwayTech.
Hmm.
So remember how we talked about how they don't just like leave their clients
Right.
with a plan, right?
Yeah.
They actually want to make sure
Yeah.
it's successfully implemented.
Right. That was the whole point of Fractional Plus, if I'm remembering correctly.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're essentially like embedding a fractional leader
Yes.
within the client's organization
Yeah.
to kind of oversee the execution of the plan that
That's,
was developed during the SwayStorm.
yes, you got it.
Okay.
It's like having this like seasoned coach in your corner,
Yeah.
kind of guiding you through the ups and downs of implementing these new strategies and making sure you stay on track.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
You can have like the most brilliant plan in the world, but without proper execution. Right. It's just a stack of papers
That's
gathering dust on a shelf.
exactly.
But isn't there a risk that bringing in someone new, right, even on a fractional basis, could kind of disrupt the existing team dynamics, or create like confusion about roles and responsibilities and things like that?
No, that's a very valid concern.
Yeah.
But I think, SwayTech really emphasizes a very collaborative approach
Okay.
to this whole fractional leadership thing.
Okay.
So, they're fractional leaders. They're not only skilled in their respective fields,
Right. Yeah.
but they're also really skilled communicators. They understand teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
They understand change management.
Yeah.
So they work really, really closely with the existing team to make sure there's a smooth integration and that everyone has kind of a unified approach to achieving these shared goals.
It's like they're adding a high-powered engine to the car.
Yeah.
But they're also making sure that the rest of the car is equipped to handle that extra horsepower, I
like that analogy.
Yeah.
It's about enhancing. It's not about disrupting.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's bringing in, that fresh perspective, that specialized expertise, but doing so in a way that really complements and empowers the existing team.
This entire approach from the SwayStorms to fractional leadership, it speaks to this like larger shift I think we're seeing in the business world. This move away from like these rigid structures and towards more like agile, adaptable models,
Absolutely. This traditional model of a company having all the answers in-house, I think is becoming increasingly, unsustainable.
Right.
And so to stay competitive, businesses have to be willing to tap into that external expertise, embrace those flexible solutions, and really just move quickly, right?
Yeah.
To capitalize on these emerging opportunities.
And that brings us back to SwayTech's kind of core philosophy, right? Of a cross-functional marketing mindset. It's not just about marketing anymore.
It's bigger.
It's about fostering a culture of like agility, innovation, customer centricity.
It's all connected.
Across the entire organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's about breaking down those traditional silos that we often build between departments and recognizing that every decision from product development to custody service, it all has marketing implications.
Yeah. So what does this all mean for our listener?
That's a great question.
Like, what are some key takeaways they can apply to their own work or business?
Right.
Even if they're not about to. Like, hire SwayTech tomorrow,
Yeah, no, and I think that's such an important point.
Yeah.
Because, while SwayTech offers this very specific set of solutions, the principles behind those solutions, I think, are universally applicable.
So for those of us who, who aren't running these like multi-million-dollar companies,
right?
What can we learn from a company like SwayTech? Because it seems like their whole approach kind of hinges on like having this team of experts. And this like hefty budget, right?
Right. Well, I think that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because while it's true that not everyone has access to those kind of resources,
right,
the underlying principles, I think, are still incredibly valuable.
Okay.
Regardless of, company size, budget, things like that.
Okay, give me an example. Like, how can someone listening to this right now Maybe they're running a small business, or maybe
Right.
they're leading a team within a larger organization.
Right.
How can they start like applying these ideas in a practical way?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that term cross-functional marketing mindset,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's about breaking down those mental silos
Yeah.
that we often build, I think, between departments.
Yeah.
So what if instead of just focusing on, like your immediate tasks, right?
Yeah.
You started thinking about, okay, how does my work impact the customer experience?
Right.
How can it be leveraged to tell like a more compelling story about our brand?
So it's about kind of being more mindful of like the bigger picture and
Yeah.
how everything kind of connects back to the customer.
Absolutely.
What else? What's another takeaway that listeners can apply?
I think embracing this kind of bias for action.
Yeah.
So, SwayTech SwayStorms,
Yeah.
while intense,
Okay.
they're ultimately about like moving from that ideation phase
Yeah.
to execution quickly
Mm-hmm.
and decisively. And I
Mhm.
think, how often do we get bogged down in like these endless meetings?
No, all the time.
Right, where these planning phases that just like completely suck the momentum out of a project.
You're telling me.
I know. I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how can you kind of apply that storm mentality
Yeah.
to your own work?
Right.
Could you maybe like, I don't know, condense a week-long project
Yeah.
into a couple of like highly focused days?
Okay.
Could you bring together like a small cross-functional team to tackle a specific challenge with a really clear goal in mind?
It's like applying that 80-20 rule, right?
Right.
To problem solving. Like what's that 20% of actions we can take
Yeah.
that will drive 80% of the results?
Exactly, and then execute on those quickly.
Yeah, I like it.
And I think don't be afraid to experiment.
Okay.
Try new things, see what sticks.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really struck me about SwayTech's approach
Yeah.
is this real emphasis on continuous learning
Mm-hmm.
and adaptation.
Okay.
They're not afraid to like throw out what's not working
Yeah.
and just try something new.
That's a great point. In a way, like their whole business model is built on this idea of like
Yeah.
challenging the status quo
Yeah.
and finding like better ways
yeah.
of doing things.
Yeah.
for the-
Absolutely, constantly iterating, evolving.
Yeah. I like that.
It's great.
Embrace the power of the storm.
Yes.
But before we get too carried away, let's bring it back down to earth for a sec.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What are some potential, like, I don't know, downsides or challenges to this approach?
Yeah.
Because it can't all be like sunshine and rainbows.
Of course not. Of course not. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think every approach has its kind of
Yeah.
limitations.
Yeah.
This kind of intensity,
Yeah.
this speed,
Yeah.
which, while exhilarating for some,
Right.
can be, very overwhelming for others.
Right.
It requires a certain level of, I think, comfort with ambiguity
Yeah.
and
yeah.
a real willingness to like adapt quickly
Yeah.
to changing circumstances.
And let's be honest, not everyone thrives in that
Yeah.
kind of like
Right.
environment.
Totally. Yeah. Some
Yeah.
people need more structure. They need more time to process information.
Yeah, absolutely.
Make decisions.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
And there's also like the risk of burnout, right?
Oh, absolutely.
If this approach isn't like
yeah.
managed really carefully,
Sure. For sure.
that constant drive for speed and results, while it might be exciting
Yeah.
in like short bursts, could be,
Yeah.
ultimately unsustainable.
It can be. It can be.
Long term.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
So it's about finding that balance
Yeah.
between like agility and sustainability, right? Between pushing for innovation,
Yeah.
but also, creating a work environment where people can thrive.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
But an important one.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
I've learned a lot.
Me too.
I'm walking away with like some really concrete ideas
Yeah.
to kind of apply to my own work. So
Me too.
thank you.
It's always so interesting to kind of explore these new approaches.
Yeah.
And just challenge conventional thinking.
Yeah.
You know?
It is.
It's fun to shake things up.
It is. And for you, our listener,
Yes.
we hope this deep dive has kind of,
Yeah.
sparked some new ideas.
Absolutely.
Maybe inspired you to rethink how you're approaching your own work,
Yeah.
your own business challenges, right?
For sure.
And remember, it's not about like copying SwayTech's model exactly.
Right.
It's about taking those core principles, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
agility, the customer centricity, that bias for action,
The mindset shift.
and finding ways to apply them to your own like
Yeah.
unique context.
Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
It's about being open to those new possibilities,
Yeah.
embracing change,
Absolutely.
and never losing sight of the impact that
Yeah.
your work has
Yeah.
on the people
On the people you serve.
that you're serving. Yeah.
It's all connected.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive.
Yeah, this was fun.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the ideas shaping
Yes.
future of business.
Sounds good.